Welcome to the Classic Soap Operas podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we're diving deep into a real cornerstone of television, Days of Our Lives.
Absolutely. I mean, talk about staying power. It's one of the longest running scripted shows anywhere, really. Been on almost every single weekday since, what was it, November 8th, 1965?
That's the date. Incredible. And we've gathered some, really fascinating material that lets us trace its whole journey.
Yeah. From the very beginning, those iconic storylines, some really emotional recent stuff, and even some of the tricky behind-the-scenes bits, too.
So we're going to try and unpack what makes Days tick, what keeps people tuning into Salem after all this time, and, what's been going on lately.
Sounds like a plan. It's a rich history, that's for sure.
Okay, so let's start with that legacy. November 8, 1965 on NBC. And it stayed there for, get this, 57 years.
57 years. Just think about that. Until September 9, 2022. Almost unbelievable in today's TV world.
Right. And then, just 3 days later, boom. September 12, 2022, it jumps exclusively to Peacock.
Which was a massive shift. I mean, that move left NBC as the only one of the original big three networks without a daytime soap opera still on the air. Kind of the end of an era, really.
Definitely marked a moment. And who was behind it originally?
It was a husband and wife team, Ted and Betty Corday.
And they had some heavy hitters involved from the start, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. Erna Phillips, basically the queen of soaps, created As the World Turns, Guiding Light. She was a story editor early on.
Wow. And William J. Bell, too, right? Before The Young and the Restless.
Exactly. He wrote a lot of those early days stories, actually left in 75 to launch Y&R full-time. Shows you the kind of talent pool they had back then.
And the show itself grew. Went from 30 minutes to a full hour on April 24th, 1975.
Which is a huge change, doubling the story output every week.
And fast forward to December 2nd, 2024, 15,000 episodes.
15,000. It's just staggering. That makes it the fourth longest running soap in the U.S.
Still a family affair, too, with Ken Corday, Betty's son, as executive producer since '86.
And it's still chugging along. Got renewed through 2026 just last November. So, deep roots, but still evolving.
Okay, let's get into the storytelling. Because Days definitely has its own unique flavor. It got a reputation early on, right?
Oh, yeah. Back in the 70s, people were calling it the most daring drama.
And why was that? What made it daring?
Well, the material we looked at suggests it tackled stuff other soaps shied away from. Things like artificial insemination, interracial relationships, even like occult themes sometimes. It wasn't afraid to push buttons.
Interesting. But alongside that, it also became maybe most famous for leaning hard into the classic soap tropes, didn't it? Sometimes taking them to, well, fantastical places.
Oh, absolutely. Resurrections, practically a weekly event in Salem.
Yeah, it's almost a shock when someone stays dead.
Right. That's kind of its trademark. And the villains. You can't talk Days without mentioning the DiMeras.
Especially Stefano DiMera, Joseph Mascolo. Iconic. He drove so much story for so long.
And his sort of mad scientist sidekick, Dr. Wilhelm Rolf, popping up whenever some crazy scheme is brewing. We should definitely circle back to him.
Yeah, he deserves his own segment. Some of those past storylines were just out there but memorable, like the Salem Stalker plot.
Oh, the Meliswin storyline, 2003, 2004. That was wild.
All these main characters getting brutally killed off week after week.
Only to find out they weren't dead at all. They were all kidnapped and stashed on the secret island called Meliswin.
Which, of course, is New Salem spelled backward. You couldn't make it up. Well, they did.
Exactly. It's pure, glorious soap opera logic. Or remember the Bradys and DiMeras, The Reveal, back in 2007.
Digging into the origins of that whole epic family feud.
These are the kinds of stories that really define the show's willingness to go big.
But it hasn't just been fantasy. The material also shows it's tried to tackle more modern issues, too, like introducing Sonny Kiriakis in 2011.
Yeah, that was significant. He was the show's first contract gay character. Not just a guest spot, but a main player.
And that led into Will Horton's storyline, right? Exploring his sexuality, coming out, his whole relationship with Sonny, even getting married.
Which was a pretty big deal for daytime back then. It showed the show could evolve and reflect, changes in society, even while keeping the resurrections and the island kidnappings going.
Strange balance, but it works somehow. Okay, let's pivot a bit to the business side. Because running a show this long isn't simple.
Definitely not. There have been challenges. Remember that sort of reboot attempt in September 2011?
Vaguely. What was the aim there? boost ratings.
Yeah, try and capture some new viewers, maybe bring back some older ones by focusing on core families and past characters.
How did that go over?
The material suggests it was pretty mixed, actually. Didn't quite hit the mark for everyone, and I think it led to some changes with the head writers not long after. It's always tricky, that balance between old and new.
And the relationship with NBC and later Sony Pictures Television, the co-producer, that wasn't always smooth sailing either, was it?
No, there were definitely some bumps. You had the usual renewal negotiations over the years, logo changes like for the 50th anniversary in 2014. But the really seismic event was that move to Peacock.
Yeah, taking a legacy show off broadcast and putting it purely on streaming. What does that really mean for a show like Days?
Well, it changes everything, right? How people watch it, you have to actively choose it on Peacock and not just have the TV on. It affects advertising, maybe gives them different kinds of creative freedom or maybe new constraints. It's a big experiment, really.
And speaking of relationships, Corday Productions actually sued Sony in 2019.
That's right. The lawsuit alleged some serious stuff, unfair treatment, problems with accounting, claims Sony wasn't distributing the show properly overseas in places like the UK and France.
And even that Sony was favoring their other big soap, The Young and the Restless.
Yeah, those were the allegations. Sony, for its part, called the claims meritless, but it definitely shows the kind of high-stakes business deals happening behind the drama we see on screen.
Real-world drama impacting Salem. But even with those issues, they've been expanding the Days universe lately, haven't they? Especially on Peacock.
They have. They did that limited series spin-off, Days of Our Lives, Beyond Salem. First one in 2021 brought back a bunch of fan favorites for a special adventure.
That did well enough for a sequel, right?
Yep.
Chapter 2 in 2022.
Yep. And they even did a Christmas movie, Days of Our Lives, a very Salem Christmas back in 2021. It's a smart way to use the streaming platform for special events.
And the show's cultural footprint is pretty big, too. It even got famously parodied on Friends.
Oh, Dr. Drake Ramoray, Joey Tribbiani's big break, that was huge exposure.
And the funny thing is, Jennifer Aniston, who played Rachel, her dad is John Aniston.
The legendary Victor Kiriakis on Days for decades. It's such a great little connection.
Did John Aniston ever cameo on Friends?
No, the material says other Days actors did guest spots, but not him, funnily enough. Still, it shows Days was definitely part of the pop culture conversation.
Okay, let's circle back to that character you mentioned, Dr. Wilhelm Rolf. He really sums up the show's wild side.
He absolutely does. Salem's very own Dr. Frankenstein, basically. Introduced back in '97 as Stefano Demera's medical guy.
His go-to for the impossible. Mostly bringing people back from the dead, right?
That's his specialty. Resurrection, miracle drugs, weird experiments, sometimes body swapping or mind control. If it's scientifically dubious and serves the plot, Rolf's probably involved.
He even died himself, didn't he? And came back.
Of course he did. Died in 2003, reappeared in 2007. It's Salem, after all.
And for years, that was William Ute playing him, right? He really made that role iconic.
He did. But recently, the role was recast. Richard Wharton took over starting July 22, 2022.
Why the change?
The material just says Ute was unavailable when they needed Rolf for some scenes, so Wharton stepped in, and he's played him in subsequent appearances too. And when Rolf shows up, trouble, or at least something very strange is brewing, like his return in October 2024, he was working with Kristen Demera.
Yeah, and the plot seemed to involve him potentially using, mind control or memory wipes to help Brady out of that hit-and-run situation.
Classic Rolf. He's the plot device that makes the impossible possible in Salem.
Okay, now, shifting tone quite a bit, let's talk about some really recent, very powerful on-screen events, things that connected deeply to real life.
I mean the June 2nd, 2025 episode, The Death of John Black.
Yeah, a character who's been central for decades, played by Drake Hodgeston. How did it happen in the story?
He died from injuries he got on a mission, basically. A heroic act to retrieve a drug that was needed to save Bo Brady.
And the reason this hit so hard for viewers, and clearly for the cast, was the real-world parallel.
Exactly. Drake Hodgeston sadly passed away in September 2024 from pancreatic cancer. Because Days tapes so far in advance, they were actually able to write this heroic end for John Black, reportedly with Drake's blessing before he passed.
Wow. It's quite something. A way to honor him within the show itself.
Yeah, giving the character a meaningful final arc that resonated with the actor's own situation must have been incredibly tough to film.
The material mentions how powerful those scenes were. Marlena, Deidre Hall at his bedside, reflecting on their whole history together. The goodbyes with Steve and Kayla.
And Deidre Hall was very open about how hard it was. She posted something like, "The hardest day ever. You can only imagine after working together for so long. Those bonds are real.
Makes the fictional grief you feel very tangible.
Definitely. But then, in typical Days fashion, in that exact same episode where John dies,
There's a miracle. Bo Brady wakes up.
after being in a coma for 2 years, the drug John retrieved worked. It was this moment of intense loss, immediately followed by this incredible hope.
Talk about emotional whiplash. Did they show his awakening?
Yeah, there was a dream sequence where Bo talked to his deceased son, Zach, played by Brandon Butler, who kind of told him it was time to go back to his family.
And then he wakes up.
And sees Hope, Christian Alfonso, and calls her Fancy Face, that iconic name. A huge payoff for longtime fans right in the middle of mourning John. Only on Days.
Truly. And they planned a tribute for Drake Hodgeston, too, right? A live stream.
Yeah, the material mentioned a planned live stream with his co-stars, a chance for them and the fans to celebrate his legacy.
Okay, finally, we do need to touch on some significant off-screen challenges the show faced recently.
Right. In July 2023, reports came out about an investigation into the co-executive producer at the time, Albert Alar.
And these are serious allegations, weren't they? About misconduct.
Yeah, reports detailed allegations of abusive behavior, inappropriate comments made during filming, particularly during intimate scenes, and even alleged physical misconduct.
And the investigation involved quite a few people, mostly women.
That's what the reports indicated. Claims of a really toxic work environment surfaced, suggesting it might have even led to some actors leaving the show.
What was the initial outcome?
Apparently, Alar initially got a written warning after the internal investigation, but then the details became public, and a petition signed by, I think, over 25 cast members started circulating, demanding he be removed.
And that led to his departure.
Yes, he exited the show in August 2023. Janet Spellman Drucker took over his role as co-executive producer.
And there was legal action, too.
There was. Ariane Zucker, who plays Nicole, filed a lawsuit in February 2024 against Corday Productions and Alar, alleging sexual harassment. The show's producers, according to the material, described her claims as without merit.
It's a really stark reminder, isn't it?
Mhm.
That behind the fantasy world of Salem, it's a real workplace with real-world problems and serious issues that need addressing.
Absolutely. It adds another layer to understanding the show's journey.
So when you pull it all together, Days of Our Lives is so much more than just, a long-running soap opera.
Definitely. It's this fascinating mix, isn't it? Classic, sometimes totally bonkers, dramatic storytelling, but also trying to reflect social changes, represent different communities.
Navigating huge shifts in the TV industry, like that Peacock move, dealing with complex business stuff, legal battles.
And then these incredibly human moments. The deep emotions around John Black's farewell, honoring Drake Hodgeston, Bo's return, alongside the real-life sadness and the difficult behind-the-scenes challenges.
It's kind of a microcosm of television history, in a way. How drama evolves, how it stays the same, how it balances pure escapism with trying to touch on reality.
Which leads to an interesting thought, maybe for you listening. How does knowing about the real-world events, the business side, the backstage challenges, maybe even the controversies, how does that affect how you watch the show? Does it change your connection to the stories unfolding in Salem?
Something to definitely chew on. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the wild, wonderful, and sometimes complicated world of Days of Our Lives.